All right, guys, welcome back. Southeastern 14, once again with Brian Edwards. And Brian joins us every week, of course, to look at all these games from a betting standpoint as we look at some SEC games and non SEC games, which we'll touch on a little bit later. But Brian, to start off with here, I want to hit on something that you said as we were going back and forth on what we're going to discuss this week. And I'm looking at your power rankings here, and I think they're very interesting because there's one team in particular that I think really stands out, and that was after a a very disappointing loss at Miami, and that's Texas A&M, who I know you've dropped quite low here, and I'm just going to give you Brian's countdown here of his SEC power rankings, and you can just again, Brian, not touch on every team, but anything you think is sort of notable on this. You got Vandy at 14, Missouri at 13, Florida at 12, Texas A&M at 11, Auburn at 10, South Carolina at 9, Mississippi State at 8, Kentucky at 7, Arkansas 6, Ole Miss 5, Tennessee 4, Alabama 3, LSU 2, and Georgia at 1. Again, Brian, I think the A&M one stands out the most. Curious your thoughts on any of those teams as well, because here's the deal, right? We've talked about it this week on the channel. It's hard to know what to do with a lot of these teams right now because it hasn't
Yeah,
been a great start for the SEC.
right. Yeah, it is. And so, and look, I feel like people do rankings differently. Like, I just want to be clear to our audience that I do mine as if, Blake's got 5 grand in his pocket and he's coming to make bets with me, and I'm the odds maker and I have to take Blake's bets. And
Right.
so I got to make somebody the favorite over whoever. Let's say they're playing in Topeka, Kansas, or whatever, just a true neutral field this week. So that's how I do my rankings. Like, I'm not saying, like, if we're talking about, the disappointment factor and what we've seen, LSU and Alabama would not be 2-3. But if I got to take the bets and they're playing this week, so therefore I try not to, have that big of an overreaction. So so I have A&M at 34th overall. So obviously I've got them ahead of Florida, Missouri, and Vandy. But yeah, and look, I wasn't very impressed with Auburn. I don't know that I've been very impressed with anybody in the SEC
Yeah.
yet. If you take both of the performances, I mean, I felt like some teams look good in week one, and a few teams look good in week two. But and I know we're going to talk about it later with the Heisman. I think it's just and just, well, I'll just briefly mention, like, nobody in the SEC is in the top 10 of the Heisman odds. And I think it's just an indication is that we're not getting very good quarterback play. Now, do I think Jaden Daniels is still going to have a monster season? Yes, I sure do. And Jackson Dart is certainly playing pretty good football. I mean, he had his protection wasn't very good at times last year, and they didn't really get going offensively until, gosh, I feel like it was late third, early fourth. And then a fortunate, I forget if it's a scoop and score or a pick six. They're late. They got the spread cover with that new line, and wow, what a surprise that was! I mean, we didn't know anything about Michael Pratt until early Saturday morning,
Hmm.
and maybe I was asleep at the wheel. I didn't realize, I didn't see him listed on any injury report. I didn't see anything about him all week, so that was a shocker Saturday morning. Um, but yeah, anyhow, so I still got LSU at 2 because I think FSU is really good, and LSU still out yarded them that game. Alabama, you know, disappointing performance last week. There's no doubt about it. Could not get off the field in the fourth quarter, and the Vols, obviously, a tie game with an FCS team. They're pretty late in the second quarter. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on Ole Miss, but I did drop them to 15 from number 11. But part of that, too, is they're so banged up. They've got
Yeah.
so many injuries at tight end and wide receivers. So we'll see how they fare. Not that it imply they're going to get a big test from Georgia Tech, even if all those receivers, some that are questionable, some are doubtful, like Trey Harris is questionable. But yeah, we'll see. So, but yeah, A&M, I had to drop them. So I guess I'm just going to ask you, like, were you thinking I should have dropped them even further?
I thought they would still be higher.
Oh, I got you. Okay. Okay.
But I think a lot of that's on the offense, right? Because I think the offense did look pretty good at times. I know Connor
Yeah.
Wegman threw his first interceptions of his career and all that, but I think that you can clearly see, and we talked about it going into the season, just the options at their disposal if Connor Wegman played well. And to this point, I think he's played pretty well for the most part.
Yeah.
Again, a couple of mistakes, which is to be expected. I think in a road game like that, but there's enough offensively. But boy, they got to tackle in the secondary if they're going to be any better. So we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. And look, I don't feel like there's a lot of separation between Auburn, A&M,
Yeah.
South Carolina is another team that needs to get healthy, especially two of their best players with Wells and Emanwari, um, the safety that led them in tackles as a
Yeah.
freshman last year.
Well, like you said, I think injuries has been a big theme in the SEC so far in terms of just some of these. Again, we talked about Rocket Sanders and such, and all of that. But I think, and we've talked about it on the channel, offensive line play has just not been good for a lot of teams, and it's surprising given the schedule. With teams kind of beating up on teams they should beat up on, and so yeah, we'll see if this is kind of maybe that week 3 where things start to swing into place here as we look at some of that, but. All right, Brian, let's jump into some of these for this week. And again, we'll focus on the games outside the SEC later on, as we usually do. Brian's got a couple picks there that I think are very interesting. But let's start with some of these SEC ones, and let's go to the one outside the SEC that I know the SEC team playing outside the league. I know you're making a pick on. That's this Vanderbilt UNLV game, and boy, I think what I've seen from Vanderbilt so far, I think Vanderbilt fans they're 2-1, but probably still are waiting for that great performance, which I don't think they had against either Hawaii or Alabama and A&M. Certainly didn't have it at Wake Forest. Now they head to Hawaii to, of course, face a former SEC head coach there, and Vanderbilt favored by 4 here. I know you're on the Commodores with that number. What are you seeing kind of with this matchup?
Yeah, so I just don't think UNLV is very good. Now I'm not gonna shame them for actually they covered the spread, losing 35-7 at Michigan. And really, the first performance, certainly the final score, 44-14. Granted, it was a FCS opponent in Bryant, but you look into the box score, they still allowed 409 yards to Bryant, and I as much as I haven't really liked a whole lot of what I've seen from Vandy. I've been okay with their offense. I mean, I think Will Shepherd is already, having another fantastic year as expected. Granted, an extra game on the rest of the league, but 20 catches, 217 yards, 6 touchdowns already. McGowan, the true sophomore, just like AJ Swan, 18 receptions, 214 yards. No TD catches, but he had that kick return for a touchdown. And, Swan has been pretty good, 61.2 completion percentage, 766 yards, 8-3 TDINT ratio, which now makes his career TDINT ratio 18-5. Not bad. For a true sophomore at Vandy, just still only into mid-September of year 2. Now, Vandy has only been a road favorite once under Clark Lee, and they won 63-10 at Hawaii as a 9.5 point favorite. UNLV has been a home underdog 32 times in the last decade, only 12-20 against the spread. So I'm going to go with Vandy laying a short number here at UNLV minus the 4. There, some books might be at 4.5, and if so, I would say by the half point to 4. I consider 4 a key number, like 3 and 7. You get finals like 21-17, 28-24 all the time.
All right, another SEC game here. One of the 3 we'll discuss in terms of SEC on SEC. I know you have a pick for this one, a couple others. Not exactly sure what to do with just yet, but Tennessee heads to Florida to play your Gators here. And in terms of the number itself, Tennessee, I think, Brian, at 6.5 at this point. I believe I've seen in quite a few spots. I know it was at
Yep.
7 for a while there. Tennessee favored by 6.5 in this one on the road. Certainly, as we know, been a hard place for the Vols to win. But you're focused in on the over-under here in this one, which is 59 for this matchup.
Correct. It looks like all books are 6.5 with one exception. That's Caesars. Looks like most books are 59. There are a few 58 and a halves out there. And I am looking at the under 21 of 26, or I'm sorry, I should say 21 of the last 26 head-to-head meetings between Florida and Tennessee have had 58 combined points or fewer. The Vols first two games this year have had combined scores of 43 and 62. The UVA game got to 62, and UVA got a late field goal there with 39 seconds left. But I think both defenses are improved. I know Tennessee has not faced any dynamic offenses, but they do lead the nation in sacks. Of course, it's only a 2-game sample, but 11 sacks leads the country. They're also second in tackles for loss with 25. And look, they had a shootout last year, 38-33, but Anthony Richardson and Hendon Hooker are gone. I know I've been really high on Joe Milton coming into the season. And I got to admit, I didn't watch any of the Austin P game. His stats didn't look that bad, but I have read and heard that he did not play very well.
Not
So,
pretty in the first half. First half
okay.
was a brutal performance for Tennessee as a whole, I think, minus the defense. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I've heard. And but I have to admit I haven't even I didn't watch any of it. But so yeah, and look, they had the dreaded team or players only meeting. When you see that, and it always just tells me that a team's having chemistry issues, and I think it's on the offensive side of the ball. So that bodes well for it. I think Billy Napier will have a game plan of run the football and a high percentage passing game, like not throwing it down the field a lot of just quick dump stuff, which is dink and dunk is how they kind of threw for. Well, I think Mertz had 300. I want to say 36 passing yards. Um, at Utah. Not that it amounted in very many points, which obviously Florida had a 35 combined points in that game, 56 against McNeese. But I think Florida's defense has improved, just like Tennessee's. So I think under is undoubtedly the play. Just a few thoughts and stats for the side. Which is a pass for me. I'm probably going to pick Florida in my contest, just on account of the 9-game winning streak over Tennessee at the Swamp, the 16-2 in the last 18, and Florida in their last 4 as a home underdog. They're 4-0 against the spread with 3 outright wins. The only spread cover they didn't win outright was the 2-point loss to Alabama. 2 years ago, early in 2021. I will also point out the Vols have been road favorites under Heupel 4 times, and they are 3-1 against the spread. And in the last 19 head-to-head meetings between these teams, Florida is 14-5 against the spread. So I lean to UF if you can get 7, but my play is under 58.5 or 59. That's one of my favorites of the week.
All right. So I know you're not playing these next 2 games as of right now. Obviously, if that changes, you will let our audience know to get in on your fine picks there. But as of right now, LSU's at Mississippi State. That's a noon Eastern kickoff on ESPN. This is this is one we have talked about a lot this week on our various shows here on the channel. This to me, Brian, feels like one of those you would if you're an LSU backer, you would really like to see LSU come out and prove something here on the road in a tough environment. Mississippi State, we know the atmosphere is going to be tremendous, and Mississippi State coming off a game where they kind of escaped to beat Arizona in overtime. Didn't feel like they played their best, but still, I thought did some very positive things. LSU 9.5 point favorite here. This thing I think at 10, maybe in a couple spots, but it does seem like 9.5 is kind of where it's settled at this point. But man, this is one where again you're better at this than I am, but like I feel like staying away from this one because I think LSU is still probably the second best team in the league just from a talent standpoint, but I don't know how much I'm supposed to learn just from a 72-10 victory against Grambling.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all those sentiments from you. I made the number 8. That's what I wrote down Sunday before the line came out. So maybe it's a little bit rich, but I mean, not by. I mean, it's only a point and a half different from me, at least right now. And if I was thinking about Mississippi State, I think not being able to put Arizona away last week was maybe a little concerning. I mean, I know Arizona's got a pretty good quarterback, and they've got really good receivers. Also, this stat was a little concerning. Mississippi State, their last 8 as a home underdog, only 1-7 against the spread. Now, another stat that would be concerning as an LSU fan. Now, granted, it's only 1 year, but as a road favorite last season under Brian Kelly, LSU went 0-3 against the spread. Now, in their last 15 trips to Starkville, though, LSU's been dominant, 13-2 straight up, 12-3 against the spread. And in the last 20 head-to-head, regardless of venue, LSU has prevailed just straight up, not ATS, in 17 of those 20. I'll just also point out the under is 7-1 in the last 8 head-to-head meetings between these teams, and the number is 54 and a half for the total. Right now it's a pass for me. Maybe if it creeped up to 10 or 10 and a half, maybe I'd think about Mississippi State, but right now it's a pass for me.
Yep, I am not feeling confident either way on this one as of right now. But okay, the Georgia South Carolina game. South Carolina's in Athens, 3:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. That's on CBS. I guess the real question here, I think a lot of people have is we've seen Georgia win by a lot of points in the first 2 games, but Georgia fans will be the ones to tell you, hey, we've not necessarily been impressed with what we've seen so far. Especially, I think again, the offensive line has been something that's been a theme, not playing as well as probably Georgia fans expected them to. Because I think even on our channel here, I think we said that could be the best position group of any team in the league in terms of having, if you had to pick one position group of anybody, Georgia's offensive line could be the best. Hasn't looked that way so far. They are a 27.5-point favorite here at home against South Carolina, which we know lost that week 1 game to North Carolina, bounced back last week, gave up much fewer sacks in terms of course, that was the big theme after the loss to North Carolina. But this one at 27.5, I know Brian also not playing this one just yet, but what do you see here with the Dogs and the Gamecocks?
You know, I I want to like South Carolina here, and I love how Rattler is playing. I love how Xavier Leggett is playing, but I'm not. I don't know if Juice Wells is healthy, and to me, he's such a difference maker for them, and he just doesn't he's nowhere. I just don't think he's anywhere close to 100% right now. Now, what the timetable on that is, I mean, I'm figuring he's probably going to dress out and play this week, but and give it a go. But I don't know that. And Nick Imanwari, who I believe was the first play from scrimmage for North Carolina, when he made that tackle out in the flat, got hurt, and I don't know if he's going to play. He's very questionable. Now, on the other side, doesn't sound very good for McConkey, and he's certainly one of their best receivers. With Bowers being a tight end, I would actually say he's probably their best receiver, certainly the most reliable one in terms of experience and what have you. But Georgia is only now. Granted, a lot of these numbers have been enormous, but under Kirby, they are only, 16, 24, and 1 against the spread as a home favorite. As for South Carolina as a road underdog under Beamer, they are 3-4 against the spread in 7 such situations. Now, if there were to, if we were to get some news on Friday that, Eamon Worry and and juice wells were good to go, and this thing creeped up above 28, which you never know what these numbers are going to do. Certainly, as we're recording here pretty early on Wednesday,
Yeah.
maybe I would think about going with South Carolina, perhaps. But yeah, right now, I'm just a fence sitter on the sidelines.
Yeah, just as you guys, just as a note for you guys, I think Brian and I usually record on Thursday afternoons, recording on Wednesday afternoons this week just to a scheduling issue. So, yeah, we are a little bit earlier than usual. So you may see, again, a little more line movement perhaps if you're watching this later in the week. But all right, Brian, I want to ask you quickly about a couple other games that, I think our fans will see some interest in that involve SEC teams. Then we're going to get to your picks outside the league. But Missouri, Kansas State. Missouri's hosting Kansas State in that one. That's a 12 p.m. Eastern kickoff on the SEC network. I told you, I said, this just feels really low to me. And even for someone like myself who kind of looked at Missouri as maybe a sleeper team in the SEC, I've seen it from the defense at times so far, but I just have not seen enough, which I think that comes off the heels of barely, escaping against MTSU. They win that one, 23-19. They were a 3 touchdown favorite in that game. But this line, I mean, it's 4.5. I think on DraftKings, 4.5, FanDuel, 4.5, 5 in some other places. So this thing just seems like it continues to kind of creep down a little bit here. And maybe that's just looking at the strength of the Missouri defense, but I don't know. For some reason, I feel like Kansas State is just a better team overall. Even though we always go back to weird things can happen sometimes in these games at Missouri. We saw that for Georgia last year, and maybe that's what you chalk this one up to. I don't know.
Yeah, so but I think the line is a little low as well. On Sunday, I wrote down K State minus 7.5. I was thinking it had to be a little north of 7. I watched a quasi decent amount of K State in the first half last week against Troy, and Troy was hanging in, pretty tough there, and then I got more focused on Nebraska, Colorado, and I think the first score I saw, like mid third quarter of Troy K State, K State had just pulled away, and I never put the channel back on there the rest of the way. So, two blowout performances for K State. I mean, let's not forget, Troy went 12-2 last year and hung around at Ole Miss early in the season in one of their two losses as well. Now, this is a big revenge game for Missouri. They got run out of Manhattan last year, 40-12, and that thing got ugly pretty early, if memory serves. I want to say it was like
Yeah.
21-0, like late first or early second. So it was never really even a game. Now Kansas State, they have only been a road favorite under Chris Kleiman 5 times, but they're 4-1 against the spread. And now, but Missouri has been really tough as a home underdog. In fact, in 7 such spots under Drinkwitz, they are 5-2 against the spread with 4 outright wins. So again, another pass for me, but I certainly lean K State. And if it were to get to 4, maybe I would put a little on K State. I wouldn't feel great about it though, because Drink has been good as a home underdog, and maybe I'm just throwing. And I hadn't really watched much of Mizzou at all, other than seeing some highlights. But maybe Drink's been a little vanilla with his offense, against these. Well, you wouldn't. I don't know, but I don't know if I can even say that, because I mean it was a one possession game late last week, and he,
Yeah.
he certainly didn't need to take that outright L. So if he was, holding back some plays for the K State game, that would be pretty audacious of him. But yeah, we'll see. Big revenge game for Mizzou. They've been good as home dogs, but K State looks like the better team, as I think we both agree on. And I would lean K State, but I haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. I just think that offense still has some limitations, and we'll see if that changes this week because they'll need some more offense. I don't think the defense can just win them this one this week against Kansas State. Another one I wanted to bring up was Arkansas and BYU. That's a 7:30 p.m. Eastern kickoff. That's on ESPN2. Remember last year, of course, 52-35 this game, and just an offensive powerhouse type game there. And now, we look at this kind of setup for Arkansas. I think they opened 10.5 point favorites. That number's down to 8.5 now. And so that thing kind of keeps going down. I think the over under I looked started at like 58.5. Now it's down to like 47.5, something like that. So we've talked about Rocket Sanders and the injury impact and all that on this Arkansas offense. There, another team did not look good last week against Kent State. And I wonder if this is kind of a spot where they start to crank things up a little bit. KJ Jefferson, that wide receiver group. I think to me, Brian, when I look at this game, we talked about it in our preview. I think the Arkansas's defense is probably the difference here because we've seen just that very sort of tenacious approach from Travis Williams, which we know they want to get to the quarterback, and they'll see a quarterback who is quite familiar with SEC teams because Keaton Slovis has been around. We know he's played multiple SEC teams, played Tennessee last year at Pitt. Now he gets a chance to play Arkansas here at BYU. So I don't know. The more I look at this, I think Arkansas's defense could really be the difference here because I don't know if I see enough firepower on this BYU offense as maybe there was a season ago. But yeah, you would certainly like to see the Hogs put together a more consistent performance here, I think.
Yes, you would. And that performance last week, to me, was concerning just because, I mean, Plumlee and UCF just absolutely just destroyed Kent State early
Yeah,
and often. And was it 14-6 at halftime or just 14-6 late second? It was 14-6 at halftime, wasn't it?
wasn't
Arkansas.
pretty. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
mean,
right.
I could not believe that was a one possession game at halftime. I will point out that KJ was the second highest graded quarterback in the country last week, according to Pro Football Focus, and actually Spencer Rattler was
Yep.
number one. But yeah, they're obviously missing Rocket Sanders. I mean, they did not run the ball very effectively against Kent State, which was just shocking to me. But you mentioned the game last year. KJ was fantastic in that game, and so was Rocket Sanders. Sanders had a monster performance in that game. I will point out, though, as a road underdog, BYU is 12-4 against the spread in 16 such spots under Kalani Sitake. But I think some of his previous teams have been better than this outfit that he's got right now. If Arkansas, it looks like, well, there's about half and half in terms of eights and eight and a halfs, and yeah, you were right about the heavy line move on the total. It looks like one offshore actually Bet Online does have a 7.5. If it were to get to 7, I might think about Arkansas. I do think Arkansas definitely wins. So if anybody is thinking of a teaser, I think Arkansas is probably a good tease team, and I might consider them if the number got to 7. I kind of doubt that it will. But we've seen some movement down on it, so you never know. But yeah, Sanders out. I mean, I think at this point right now, if I'm an Arkansas fan, I mean, I'm just hoping. I mean, I know they're optimistic that they've got him back for the LSU game, but I'm just hoping you got him back for the A&M game,
Yeah.
and don't bring him back too soon because he needs to be right whenever he does come back because he's one of the best running backs in the country, no doubt about it.
Yep, big storyline to watch for sure here as we move forward with Arkansas. But all right, Brian, let's talk about some games outside the SEC. I know you've got a couple picks you've already made for that involving two teams that are getting talked about quite a bit in terms of Florida. We'll start with Florida State and we'll also get to Colorado as well if you want to hit on both of those in terms of looking at the totals for both of those teams in week 3.
Yeah, so I have played, and this is probably well, I, I s- I went to weather.com, which
You have
Uh,
to.
yeah, we ball game predictors are in an exact science as well, and we certainly fail at times. But I don't think anybody in any profession fails more than meteorologists, and especially when it's Wednesday and we're forecasting what the weather's going to be on Saturday. With all that said, I will point out weather.com says that in Chestnut Hill, and FSU's playing at Boston College, that there is a 75% chance of rain and that the wind expectation is 22 to 25 miles an hour. So that does not bode well for any sort of offense, if it's 25-mile-an-hour winds and a driving rainstorm. But we can't sit here and say that that's definitely going to be the case. There's been many times in my football prognostication career that on a Wednesday there's been all kinds of crazy weather forecasted, and then you get to that game day and it's beautiful day. So we'll see on that. But I still like it anyway. I'm only stopping short of calling it my favorite play because of this potential weather. But so FSU last week, and that was one of my winners last week, had them over 41 and a half team total against Southern Miss. And um, they had 52 on Southern Miss. And so we were already over by double digits, the 41 and a half point number, with 10:26 left in the third quarter. And they got to 66 with 11 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And I mean, I only think Jordan Travis played a possession or two in the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken. I was feeling pretty good at halftime about that pick, so I wasn't paying as much attention to that game. But look, Keon Coleman continues to look fantastic. 12 catches, 170 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jordan Travis, 6-1 TDINT ratio. And this Boston College team is really bad. They were able to get an overtime win over they lost their opener in overtime to Northern Illinois 27-24. But then the Salukis turned around and lost 14-11 to an FCS opponent, Southern Illinois, last week. And then last week for Boston College, they beat Holy Cross 31-28, but had to get a forced fumble late as Holy Cross was driving. So, even if it is a driving rainstorm, I still think FSU is going to run the ball down their throat, and maybe the conditions will warrant being able to throw it. But look, I mean, Jordan Travis can run the ball very well. Also, I mean, I'm sure Norvell wants to keep him out of harm's way, but I even in a horrible weather, I still think they get to 45, and if it's good weather and they play well, they should definitely get into the 50s. So I'm going over 37 and a half on FSU. And again, we got to watch the weather on this one, but I'm not against over 48. Just both teams combined either. I'd rather just do it this way though. And look, if you can get FSU in the first quarter -7, I wouldn't be against that. I'm sorry, as well. I doubt their first half number would be 14. It'll probably be north of 14. Oh, actually, in fact, I can look that up right here. Yeah, it looks like it's 14 and a half. I don't think I'd want to do 14 and a hook. But yeah, so FSU's team total over 37 and a half is my favorite on that game.
Colorado State. Dion continues the run here, and boy, they look good against Nebraska. Now they'll keep it going here in the in-state matchup against the Rams.
Yeah, they were sloppy in the first half offensively, but I came away even more impressed overall because, and look, I know Nebraska's got issues offensively, and Jeff Sims and his unforced turnovers are just so unacceptable. So I'm not implying it was just some masterful defensive performance from Colorado, but it was certainly um, encouraging, I thought. They were they showed some life defensively. And then once Sims had that one, touchdown run there in the third quarter, then Colorado really got it together offensively. I think they answered with 4 straight touchdown drives, if I'm not mistaken. So I did end up hitting that Colorado team total over. It wasn't looking good early, but we did get there, and we cashed Colorado. We lost on their team total in the first half. But so looking at Colorado State, they were off last week, but in week 1, They were at home to Washington State, and Washington State scored 50, and Washington State had 43, which would work for us with a team total of 41 and a half. They had that in Fort Collins with 11:22 remaining. And I think Colorado has a better offense than Washington State. Both are good offenses, but I think Colorado's is better, and they are at home. And weather.com tells me it's going to be absolutely beautiful in Boulder, a perfect night for football. So I think Shador Sanders has another big game. There's also a player prop that I saw on him. His passing yards is 326 and a half. I'm not against that over. I think our only concern will be is if they're up 42 to nothing early third quarter and Dion yanks him just to, get him some rest and keep him healthy. That would be our biggest uh, concern there. I took his team or his player prop over 308 and a half passing yards last week. And even with that mediocre start, it ended up getting over I forget exactly when. I think I tweeted it out. It might have been late third quarter, but I'm thinking it was probably more like early fourth. So, but the team total over for Colorado 41 and a half. That's the main one I like there.
Meanwhile, another one you've got, Navy travels to take on Memphis. That's a Thursday night game, 7:30 Eastern tomorrow night. So I know you've got a play on this one as you look at kind of how this one goes in. Memphis, a couple touchdown favorite here against the midshipmen.
Yeah, and it looks like I guess this has happened in the last hour or so. It looks like it's down to 14 at most
Mm.
books, so even better because I was thinking 14 it was 14 and a half or 15 this morning. So even better. So Memphis has won 4 in a row over Navy last year on the road. Memphis won 37-13. 2 years ago at home, they beat the midshipmen 35-17. Memphis hasn't really played anybody, but they have pounded who they've played. They beat Bethune-Cookman 56-14. They went to Jonesboro last week and beat up on Butch Jones 37-3 at Arkansas State. And Seth Hennigan, Memphis QB, completing 73.8% of his passes. He's got a rushing touchdown, 4 passing touchdowns. He's now got a 51-18 career TDI/INT ratio and 26 career starts. I ignorantly backed Navy in week 0 and didn't see a whole lot out of them in that game. They got right against an FCS opponent last week, but I think Memphis should win this game by 17-24. And it being on a short week, that always favors the home team. Maybe not as much because you don't have as much time to, prepare for this triple threat, but they are conference rivals. They play each other every year now. So I think Memphis will be fine. And look, not one of my favorites. It's certainly not. I won't have as much of an investment on this one as most of the others. But it is Thursday night. Other than the Vikings and Eagles, it's our only college game to watch. So let's get some action on it. Let's go Memphis minus 14.
There you go. And there are Brian's thoughts on the action in week 3 here as we get ready for another fun week. And finally, if you're an SEC fan, SEC on SEC games, which I know always means things are about to crank up a bit as we really see what we've overreacted to and maybe what we've not overreacted to with some of these teams when perhaps they start to get exposed by other SEC teams. But anything else, Brian, before we wrap up this week?
Well, just be careful if you're thinking about Ole Miss because they've got a ton of injuries.
Yeah.
Looks like Zachary Franklin doubtful. A couple other receivers out. Trey Harris might be a game time decision, and that's unfortunate. He got hurt because he was having such a monster impact there early in the year. I don't think I mentioned. I'm still considering Duke. I haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. It's a pretty big number, but it is against Northwestern. I might end up doing something there, but as always, I usually tweet out my picks, so you can see my Twitter handle there at Vegas B Edwards. I also have a lot of written content at majorwager.com as the week or as we get later into the week. But yeah, for now, I think that's all I got on week 3. If you're tailing me, best of luck. Let's go.
Yep, do it. Should be another fun week here as we look at that. I think what was it last week, Brian? I hit again. It was Utah State a couple weeks, and I think it was Eastern
Eastern
Michigan last
Michigan.
week. That was the
I
one I played last week. Felt great about it. It got a little close there, but
I,
for a
I
while
almost
it was.
I almost texted you late in the game. Did you watch what was going on there?
I was seeing how it was going, and I was like, "Uh oh." So yeah, I was keeping up on my phone with that one, and I was like, this is getting a
We
little interesting." So,
we owe PJ Fleck a beer for kicking that field goal
oh
there
my,
on 4th and
yeah.
goal at the like 1.5 yard line. I appreciate PJ. When the
Oh,
field goal team came out, I was like, oh, I love
I
you,
know.
PJ.
I know. Well, we're 2 for 2 the last couple weeks, me playing those, so I'm gonna think go to Memphis on this one this week, and maybe a little Colorado and Florida State action as well. So again, check out all of Brian's stuff. Like he says, you can follow him on Twitter at Vegas B Edwards. He's also updating injury stuff and all sorts of stuff like that on our Twitter at 14 Southeastern. You can find us there, and again, be sure to hit that subscribe button on the channel. You can listen to this as well on our podcast feed. Search for Southeastern 14 any podcast app you use. And we appreciate you guys watching and listening as always. And we'll talk to you again here soon at Southeastern 14.